Hello, I'm Karen Love, a co-founder and the CEO of the Dementia Action Alliance. Thank you for joining us for this special event to talk about Pathways to Wellbeing with Dementia, a manual of help, hope, and inspiration. It's a must-have book for anyone touched by dementia. Most people are surprised to learn that when individuals are diagnosed with dementia, they're not provided with any information about how to live with and manage the symptoms of this complex condition. People are expected to figure it out themselves. The lack of information, coupled with a societal doom and gloom narrative about dementia, leaves people feeling fearful and hopeless. Believing this is a major societal issue, the Dementia Action Alliance and its project partners developed this practical, proactive 428-page book grounded in science and first-person experiences about living with and managing the symptoms of dementia in order to support their well-being. Pathways is a trusted source of information about living with dementia, and it truly is filled with lots of help, hope, and inspiration. The book was made possible through the funding support of the Bright House Financial Foundation and ASI, and we thank them. DAA worked with a dream team of collaborators, including Beth Baker, who was Pathways writer and editor. I want to describe for you the book development process because its comprehensiveness contributed to the quality and integrity of the content. First, there was a 9-person steering committee that included 2 individuals living with dementia and 7 others with diverse dementia knowledge and expertise. This group provided a macro level in the development, input, and oversight. 9 people living with dementia and 6 care partners representing socioeconomic, ethnic, educational, geographic, and form of dementia diversity, as well as 33 leading dementia specialists, provided their expertise as contributing authors. Additionally, there were 25 collaborating dementia specialists who offered feedback as the book developed and then provided edits and comments for each of the 8 sections of the draft. This unique and comprehensive resource truly took a village to develop, and DAA is deeply appreciative and grateful for all of their contributions. Some of the contributors are joining us today for this event. Pathways can be accessed online and downloaded for free. There is a at-cost fee of $29 plus shipping for a printed copy, and the URL is noted on the screen. We'll be taking some questions at the end of the program. You're welcome to submit your questions in the chat box. Next, I'd like to introduce Jan Bays, DAA's board chair. Jan? Jan, you're on mute.
Thank you, Karen. I am so excited to be officially announcing Pathways to Wellbeing with Dementia to the world. I feel blessed to have been part of this project and to have had the opportunity to work with amazing contributors. Now it's time to have the honor to be able to share the work with others. The mission of Dementia Action Alliance is to advocate for, educate about, and support people living with dementia. Pathways to Wellbeing with Dementia addresses all of these goals. We've heard over and over again about the horrors of receiving a dementia diagnosis and being given no hope. Yet we've seen that many people do lead meaningful, purposeful lives after diagnosis. There are many books available about dementia. Most deliver a tragedy narrative. Others approach from a medical perspective. There are some that provide a moving personal story. But we saw as missing a resource that honestly addresses the challenges and concerns of a person living with dementia and provides trustworthy, objective information and practical experiences and advice from the true experts, those who are living with the challenge. Pathways to Wellbeing with Dementia gives voice to those who with the lived experience, as well as noted dementia experts and care partners. It provides information about the diseases that cause dementia and the practical aspects related to living with dementia. And very importantly, it provides information about how to navigate life from those who are doing it successfully. We at the Dementia Action Alliance believe that every person receiving a dementia diagnosis needs and deserves this information. We want this resource to be available to each and every person receiving that diagnosis, and also to the personal and professional care partners who support them. Therefore, Pathways is available to download on our DAA website for free, and you can order a printed copy for cost, as Karen has explained earlier. Pathways is described as a manual of help, hope, and inspiration. A dementia diagnosis is life-changing, and so one needs a how-to manual, and that is just what the Pathways is. Karen?
Thank you, Jan. And now we're going to go to our individual contributors. Cynthia, we'll start with you. As a person living with dementia, how is this book different than other books available?
Hi, everybody, and thank you for that question, Karen. I think that one of the ways that this is so different from other resources is that people living with dementia and care partners, we were involved from the very, very beginning. And not just people living with Alzheimer's dementia, people with different kinds of dementia, but there were a variety of voices representing the diversity of our lives and of our experiences. We weighed in on the content. That was so important. What we as people with a diagnosis and care partners wish we could have known right from the get-go, what we should have been told. I think it was so helpful because we didn't have to rely on, often what's told to us is that there is no hope and you should just come back and get your affairs in 6 months and get your affairs in order. So we were able to weigh in on the content. We wanted something that would be helpful and hopeful and inspirational. We wanted people to look beyond the diagnosis, and we wanted to have a title that was hopeful so that people would want to read this manual. And so together we chose a title that reflected our vision of a world where we could live well with a dementia diagnosis. I think what makes it so unique is that our voices are shared throughout the manual. Our words and our experiences, our stories. And so people who are picking this up have a sense of how they might be aided by our wisdom, our experiences throughout the manual. A wonderful part of the manual are the guides, the people with the lived experience, the people living with dementia and the care partners kind of guiding us through the different chapters of what we may encounter along the way. It's really such a wonderful tool that changes the focus of a dementia diagnosis. From wondering why is this happening to me to what's next? How can we move forward in this journey together? It's just an extraordinary work. And I want to thank Beth Baker. She was just a wonderful help in putting this together.
Oh, that's a nice shout out to her. She was pretty amazing. Well, I just want to add a footnote question, if I may. Would this book have been helpful to you soon after being diagnosed?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I live alone. I went by myself to through all the testing. And so just, I had to figure it out on my own. And if I'd had this manual, it would have made things so much more easy for me to navigate. And also it would have given me a sense of hope right from the beginning. I didn't know anyone else in the early stages of dementia. This would have been a wonderful resource, and just connecting with DAA is another wonderful resource. So yes, it's life-changing.
Oh, thank you. Susan, as a physician, what do you see as the benefits of the book?
You know, Karen, thanks for the question, and hello, everyone. You know, this book in some ways is the book I wish I had had 40 years ago, starting out as a practicing physician, because I think one of the challenges for physicians has always been that much of our training talks about hope in terms of cures, as opposed to looking at disorders, diseases, conditions as having a profound impact, no question, but on a whole person. And that aspect of having dementia is only a part of the equation. And certainly the medical part, the symptoms part, is only part of the equation. So this manual really brings together the what is, I think, a more contemporary way of practicing medicine, where the focus is not just on a disease, but is a focus on the well-being of a person living with any chronic condition. And so this manual really does take such a holistic approach. It focuses on well-being, it focuses on psychological, emotional, and functional health, as Cynthia has alluded to, and as you did in the introduction. You know, this manual you put so well, describing it as something grounded in science and enlivened by lived experience. And so that it has that perfect blend of the sort of professional, if you will, and the personal, and brings those voices all together. I've encountered a lot of resistance among my fellow physicians over the many years of my career when I have talked with them about the importance of early diagnosis, the importance of being able to take a strength-based approach to dementia care. And I've often met with this resistance of there are no resources to give people. I'm not going to screen. I don't want to diagnose because I have nothing to give them. And now I can go and say, you do have something to give them. And you do have a way to maintain hope, that hope is about more than a cure for anything. And so this manual, I hope to see really distributed widely among our primary care practices as part of a grant I'm involved in. And I really think that it will give hope to physicians as well as to people living with dementia. So they have a resource. They can turn to something that is more enriching than just a symptom focus or a problem behavior focus. And I think that space is pretty well covered. This really brings an appropriate message of hope, not sugar-coated, but sort of the real deal from the real people who are living with it and those of us who support them. So I could not be more excited or honored to have been a contributor to this manual, which I've needed through my whole career. So thanks.
Well, thank you. And I love your point, well, all your points, but no sugarcoating. That was one of the things that really touched me were the individual pieces contributed by people living with dementia who were so open and candid and shared from their hearts. It was just amazing to me, their courage, to share that. So go ahead.
Yeah, and Karen, you just reminded me of something I wanted to say, which is that, we actually know that health and well-being is, what do I want to say, optimized when you are engaged with your peers. And you just reminded me of that because there's people speak truth to truth, and it's just when you are engaged with your peers, it reminds you you're not alone, and you're talking to people whom get it. And unless you have, sort of good listeners and good friends and good healthcare people, you might sometimes feel people aren't going to get it. We all try to. But somebody who lives with, if not exactly your same experience, but lives with the same challenges, just understands it in a different way. And your remark reminded me that I wanted to really emphasize that there's no substitute for peer support in regaining health and well-being. So thank you.
Oh, great point. And I wanted to let our audience know that one of the features of this book is that we created it somewhat organically. It's print on demand because we want to be able to go in and update with new editions over time. And that's easy to do in both the electronic version and then a print on demand. So we look at this as a resource that will continue to grow. Or I ask you, as a former public library deputy director and dementia advocate, what community value do you think the book has?
Oh, thanks for that question, Karen. Greetings from Northeast Ohio, everyone. You can't see, but I'm wearing several hats. I have my public librarian hat on. I have my care partner for 2 parents who were diagnosed with dementia. And I am also associated with DAA, so a lot of hats on my head, but I want to talk about from the public librarian perspective. Public libraries are really dedicated to 2 things. One is free access to rich resources, accurate information, and also community well-being. Well, that's the business that public libraries are in. And the manual does just that, right? It provides a free, very rich resource that is free to all. You may have a Carnegie Library in your town or city, and you know that Carnegie always wrote at the top, free to all. And so that really resonates with the public library community. And not only is the manual free, but it is accessible in other ways. And so all of the ways that everybody has spoken of today, but also it's just easy to use. It's easy to pull up on the screen and then to navigate through. And that means everything. A resource that isn't easy to use, as free as it may be, is not valuable. So for the library community, and the reason that our library system has it posted on our Dementia Inclusive Resource page is because it is such a user-friendly document. The other thing that I would say is that public libraries, the best public libraries, ask the question, whose story isn't being told, whose voice isn't being heard, and what narratives do we need to change? How do we dispel misinformation? How do we dispel stigma? And this manual, Pathways, is all about that. Everything that you've heard, those voices that aren't heard, and the stories that aren't told, it makes good community sense, not just good heart sense, but it makes good business sense. It makes, in every aspect of community, it makes good sense to have the voices of those living with dementia and their care partners heard in every aspect across every sector. Pathways makes that possible. And it's just, again, also very proud to have had a small role in it. And I just think it's a tremendous resource now and going forward. So thanks so much, Karen.
Well, it wasn't a small role. For one thing, you provided a ton of fabulous edits and comments in the draft form. Seema, I want to ask you, please, as a family care partner, how would Pathways have been helpful to you and your family?
Thank you for the question, Karen. It's twofold, basically understanding the need for agency, I think, for the person who has dementia, and secondly, the amount of resources that are available for people caregiving for that person. My mother passed away in 2019, but what happened when we first noticed the changes in her in her speech and also in her gait and also in her memory, was that we were just coming off the back of 3 years of illnesses with my mom. So she had heart surgery, which then we started noticing changes after the heart surgery. But then during those changes, she also got cancer. So as a family, we work as a unit very tightly, and we were in caregiving mode, post-surgery, post-operations, post-chemo, post-radiotherapy. So when we actually went to the specialist to get a diagnosis, we went to 2 specialists. We were looking, because this is all we knew, we were looking for medication that would help. And then would we not need someone to hire a care professional? If I had had Pathways with me, we would have stopped to think, and we would have thought, okay, we've helped her physically get through her chemotherapy, radiation, and heart surgery, but now this is something different. We need to stop and actually ask her, what does she think? What is she able to do? How would she like her room? Does she need a caregiver? If it is a caregiver, would she like to interview them? To give you some more background, we live all over the world. My siblings are in Asia. My father and I were in LA at the time. So all we were thinking is, how can we manage this long term? And the best thing that we did was actually take her back to Asia, because we were able to get help. But in the meantime, we could have actually just helped her maintain her agency by asking her about her environment, asking about what she likes to do, getting her, keeping her involved with the grandchildren, going and buying presents for them, because we were in such a rush. And this is really a reflection of the responses of the caregiver themselves, about how we were feeling. We wanted to get everything done for her as quick as possible, that we didn't stop to think in those early stages, what is it that you need? We need your opinion on things. So that's the first thing, is understanding the agency. And then secondly, I think also in terms of providing advice to friends, who a few of them now, their parents also have dementia, is I've changed my approach in giving advice on reading pathways, is to focus on building their agency, and then not rushing to do things for them, because we don't want to take away that habit, that ability. It's like a muscle of making those decisions, and also to approach them in a different way. I am now a mother, and I have to say, I don't treat my daughter like I would engage with my husband or with my friends. I try to sit there and I try to focus and think, what is it that she's telling me that she's not able to say right now because she hasn't formed the words, or she doesn't remember the words? I think it's to ask my friends to slow down, really think about how this person with dementia is trying to engage with you, because there is an engagement. Towards the end, my mother, it sort of happened quite quickly. She wasn't able to use words, but what I discovered, and this is probably, if I had Pathways back then in 2019, it would have been in Pathways as well, is that you can use your emotions, your voice, to connect with that person. So we could talk about anything, as long as my mother recognized the emotion that I was trying to convey to her. She would smile, she would relax a bit more, and she was much happier. So in the last 6 months or so, we were able to, I think, give her more than we would have done if we just focused on the medication.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm going to open this up to everyone. Were there specific parts of Pathways that you like best? Yeah, Siwa.
I think the agency part, and also the fact that there are resources there. If I had Pathways, I would have thought about a speech therapist for my mum. So those are the 2 pieces I like best. And another perspective as well is that it's cultural. How you caregive for the person with dementia is also very cultural. And I love that. I love actually learning from other cultures. How do you do something? How can I do better by learning from you?
Oh, nice. Who else? What else did you like? Yeah, Barb.
For me, I think one of the most valuable pieces, and again, recalling my experiences with both of my parents, is the enhancing communication piece, especially in its design of having the personal solutions and then what can others do. And often when I speak to groups about as part of Dementia Friendly Summit County, we do Dementia Friends presentations, and that's people want to know, how do I communicate, right? Communication is the basis of everything, and we've heard that today, and I think it would have been for me so tremendously helpful to have that juxtaposition of, that personal solutions. This is what I need from you, and then what can others do, and again, I think it would have directed me to providing greater agency than I did, and so that's extraordinarily valuable to me.
Oh, thank you. Cynthia.
One of my favorite parts of the book was hearing the voices of other people who are on this journey, and some of their struggles, their victories, their helpful hints. Just that was so special about the book for me.
And I think, that really does reflect, Cynthia, what Barbara and Sewal were both talking about, which is this notion of agency. It's that the manual doesn't just talk about it being important. You see through the lived experience of those who share their voices, what it means to have agency, how health promoting that is, how strength promoting it is, and how it makes the challenge a challenge, something that can be engaged, to be dealt with, to bring one's best self to, so to speak. And so I think that really is reflected in it. What I also like about the manual, and I didn't at first, I will be honest, was its length. I'm like, a 463-page manual? But here's the great thing about the way it's organized, the way it's written, and the way it is set up online and as a PDF, is that you can interact with it. You can dip in and out of it. The sections are so clear that, as a couple of other people mentioned, as a resource, you have a question, you can turn to the Pathways Manual, and just like search the obvious term, and you will find a nice discussion of that. And I really, really liked that. The last thing I'll say, since I have the floor, is we talked before about the candor that people have sharing the dark side as well as the success sides of this. And I'm particularly struck by the honesty of the younger people, or people with earlier onset, or people with who are younger, talking in particular about very intimate subjects like their sexuality and intimacy. And that's what I mean, I guess, by it having, every aspect of life. It's not just like an aspect of dementia. It's like life lived with dementia, and that includes sex, right? And so there are just such candid and positive discussions. I'm thinking, of course, for those of you who haven't seen the manual, of JR's discussion of being a gay man living with dementia and the struggle to find a partner. It comes to mind immediately, because it's one of the many, like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that moments, for myself as a physician. So thank you everyone who contributed if you're on this call, but that came to mind.
Yeah, I've noticed a bunch of the names. We do have a lot of the contributors. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're indebted. Jan, how about you? Was there anything you loved especially?
Yes. Well, when I was thinking about this question, there were so many aspects that I love about this manual. But I keep going back to the agency and the aspect that Cynthia so beautifully described and Susan supplemented. It's that we're hearing from people who are actually experiencing living with dementia and doing it so very, very well. I think that there's a misconception out there in the world that people can't live with dementia well. And I know so many people who blow me away with the achievements that they're achieving every day while they're living with dementia. And I think, yes, it's nice to hear from the experts experts, from the researchers, from the doctors who have studied the disease processes, and from the psychologists to analyze our mental health. But if I really want to learn how to practically address a problem that I'm confronted with every day, I want to hear from someone who has a similar background and is dealing with that problem and getting their practical advice. I mean, the ideas that we've learned about how you can make your kitchen work for you, things that we don't even think about that are so important, and that people have made these adaptations, and so that they can continue doing the things that they want to do. And that's what people want. That's what people need to have quality of life and to experience well-being. We need to continue to do those normal things that we've done every single days of our life, and not have someone say, oh no, you have a dementia diagnosis, you can't cook any longer. Well, maybe there's a way that I can do it. Let's explore that. And the manual helps us explore those on many topics. So I have to say, that's the thing that I love the most about the manual.
Thanks, Siwa.
I just wanted to look back on what you just said. It's when you do go into the diagnosis, the conversation literally is, you have it, or these are the symptoms you're having, so we can conclude it is something like this. And then it's almost as if you come to a full stop, including the person with dementia and the caregivers. They're sitting there going, okay. And you're struggling in your head as a caregiver to ask the question, is that, what do I need to do? And it's usually, well, you should have some care in place. But then what? And I think if I had this book, Pathways, at least the specialist could have given it to me and said, you go and read this, and you'll find a lot of things that you can do. And that is the thing, is that I want to find a lot of things that we can do in this new stage of life, and not to look at it like a full stop. It's a ... and then some. That's what I felt about when I read Pathways. There was something more. And I think it gives people hope, which we sorely need when we're actually in the face of something which is quite unknown to us, as someone who's not in the field, or who's not a specialist.
We have a question from a participant. Can you define what you mean by agency? Great question. Who wants to take that?
Well, Sewa, you introduced it first. I'm happy to take a stab, but would ask you to comment as well. When I think of agency, I think the other synonyms that come to mind are things like self-determination, autonomy, choice, self-direction, and it really means being the person who establishes what matters most. It's the person who establishes what's important, what the goals are, and how you want to go about meeting them. It's so different than independence. It's not about doing everything for yourself. It's having everything that you do and is done directed by yourself. That's kind of the way I think about agency. So it's sort of combination of, what's important, what people wish, and then directing their life goals as well as their care goals. Is that kind of how you were meaning it as well, Sewa?
Yes, it is. I mean, I think in any stage in life, the person, whether they have a sickness or whether they are diagnosed with something in particular, or they're young or they're old, and they're someone who works in the company, they like to feel as if they're being heard. Okay, so they're being heard, but they're not being, their input is not being used. That's fine, but they are being heard, and that they can contribute to something. I think that's really important. All of us want that. All of us want that. We don't want to be seen as victims, basically. We want to say that we made choices to improve our lives. We made choices to give input. And so it's basically about being heard, and it's being able to feel that in some way you've made some small decision that contributes to the situation.
Oh, good point. There's another question here, and it's actually excellent and one we hadn't thought of, so I super appreciate you bringing it up. One of the couples we support are both blind. Is there a voice version? No, not yet, but we can certainly, as I said, this is an organic resource, so we can certainly address that going forward. There is also a point here about, giving specific examples. We're not doing that quite so much in the event, but that's exactly what's in the manual. It's very granular. And there are lots and lots of examples. There are lots of strategies people use. And Cynthia's smiling because she is just a fountain of creative strategies and workarounds. So yeah, and I don't know, can we unmute Steve and Susan Taylor? I know Steve had his hand up. Okay, Steve, you're on.
Hi, as a member of DAA and a person living with dementia, I really was relating to many of the things that Cynthia was talking about and the value of what the manual is and what it does. I know that when Susan and I went to we first went to our family doctor, and he was helpful and gave us direction and told it, referred us to a neurologist. But all the while, we were hoping and expecting to find a diagnosis of some kind of a brain tumor or, even though that sounds horrible, we wanted anything but, the dementia diagnosis or Alzheimer's diagnosis. And we were really afraid of that. And of course, we were not nearly as knowledgeable about those things as we are now. But I know that if our doctor had had that manual in his office, or if these doctors could have been able to share with us, more of a guide and a foothold to, even if the diagnosis was different, okay, to be able to understand what it is and what it isn't. It's a beautiful book, and it is of a great help.
Oh, thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Cynthia, one of the many things that I admire about you is your use of technology to support your changing cognitive abilities. Do you want to talk for just a minute about that?
My goodness, thank you, Karen. I do rely on technology. I'm just so grateful that I'm able to Zoom, but that's just one piece of it. I use my phone for so many things. I set reminders for myself. I use technology to keep myself safe in my house. I use my technology throughout the day, but just having that as something that's described in the manual with some specific examples on how people can use technology, then it's a resource. You can flip to that section to say, I wonder what I could do. They talked about that today, and it's right there, and people can see what works best for them. And I think that's one of the wonderful parts of this book is people sharing ideas on things that have worked, that you might try in this journey, that we're helping each other along the way. And I love that word pathways in our title, because we're on a journey and we're not alone. We've got this wonderful organization that supports us. We've got a wonderful manual that will provide guidance to people living with a dementia diagnosis and care partners. It's going to be a great resource for teaching hospitals, medical schools, get it into our local libraries. There's so many possibilities about using this manual and getting it out to the public, because it will help people find meaning in their journey and hope and inspiration.
Go ahead.
I would like to follow up just a moment on Cynthia's comment there, and it kind of ties in with the whole agency piece, and also what makes this manual different. As I said earlier, there are a lot of books written about dementia now. There are a lot of different aspects, but I think the one thing that sets the pathways apart is that the audience, the targeted audience, is actually people living with dementia, not the physicians, not the students, not care partners. All of those people are very secondarily benefit from the information and the knowledge there, because they need to know this too. But this is the Pathways is a manual that's directed toward people living with dementia to say, this is what it is. This is the true stuff about dementia and the things that you are likely to run into. And this is how some very talented, resourceful people have dealt with these challenges and have dealt with it well. And you know what? You can do it too. And so it is an amazing, amazing journey and hope.
Oh, Susan, go ahead.
Thanks, Karen. I noticed somebody in the chat box said, doctors won't read a book this big. Is there a shorter version? And to that person, you are absolutely correct. Doctors anymore won't even read one-page handouts. I think that healthcare folks are pretty inundated. But as Jan has just emphasized, the real goal here is to get this into the hands of people and care partners, people living with dementia, their care partners. But I would say this about doctors. Any one of you who are on this call today, the next time you have just a regular old visit, or if you're an older adult, when you go in for your annual wellness visit, or if you're a person living with dementia, the next time you visit your healthcare practitioner, say, have you seen this yet? Why don't we have a copy in your waiting room? You can download it. You can buy it for $26. And I'm quite serious about this because, you know, the people who really do still have the most influence with their doctors are their patients. And I use that term not to generalize everybody as a patient, but when that person is in your waiting room and they've come to see you because you're a doctor, that is the relationship that you have. And our patients have the most impact on us. So I always ask at every wellness fair that I do, I ask every older adult when they're going in to tell their physicians what matters most to them. And if there's somebody with dementia, I tell them to ask, have you heard about DAA now? And now I can say to them, have you heard about Pathways? So that's my action step to all of you, my ask that go to your local library, when you go to your doctor, wherever you have an opportunity to just say, hey, have you heard about this book? Use that opportunity. You'll be much more effective than I will be, or any of us will be, frankly, in getting this under doctors' noses, but I'm going to try.
Well, and that way we also, activate a community and give people, very easy can-do action steps. I changed my screen because I wanted to be able to show you, we created this as a resource, not something that you would read cover to cover. And as you can tell, if you look on the sides, each section is color coded. So, even busy physicians and other individuals, you can quickly go to the table of contents and, find the page and just look at that one thing. It's a nice reference to have on your desktop. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We could go on and talk for, at least double this. I want to thank very much our speakers who joined us today. Your feedback, your insights are very helpful. And I just wanted to leave on the note that Pathways ensures no one has to figure out how to live with and manage symptoms of dementia alone. Please help us let people know about this wonderful resource. Thank you so much for joining us today.